This story caught our eye. A Princeton op-ed argues that conservatives have no right to free speech. Take a look at this. A student at Princeton, Ryan Bourne, writes in the Daily Princetonian. He said, when conservatives appeal to free speech, it's actually a calculated political move designed to open up avenues of political discourse while shaming others for moving in active political opposition. In my belief, when conservative ideas are opposed, there is no right that is being infringed. The op-ed sparked outrage from students and professors on campus. Joining us now is one of those students. His name is Nicholas Saleo. He's also a...
Reading the articles after seeing my classmate on Fox and Friends led me to question whether conservatives have a place here on campus. So I decided to investigate. Is free speech really threatened at Princeton University, and do conservatives really appeal to a fake right? I'll start by asking the experts.
There was an article written a couple weeks back at the beginning of the semester here at Princeton by a fellow classmate of mine, in which he said that not only do conservatives appeal to a fake right when they appeal to the right of free speech, but that they've been heard before and that they shouldn't be heard again. It was just kind of a ludicrous claim on itself, one that didn't seem to make any sense, especially when you have the rights given to us in the Constitution, the rights that are there in the own rights, rules, and responsibilities here at Princeton. Nor was it anything like the reality of the experience that I've seen so far at Princeton with students' freedoms universally. The university, Eisgruber, the administration, does a great job in allowing equal opportunity for various activities, various speakers to come to campus. I've never once had a problem with them trying to shut down any sort of conservative group over a liberal group. I think they're very even-handed and truly do promote a culture of free speech. And that's where I wrote a tongue-in-cheek response trying to show him that there is in fact a basis for the right to free speech and that it is in fact important here on our university's campus.
One of the great blessings of teaching at Princeton, where I have had an extremely happy career, is that this university respects and always has, in my 32 plus years, respected free speech. That means that on this campus, anybody is permitted to advocate any idea, to criticize any idea, to hold any view. And in 2015, we strongly, formally reaffirmed and recommitted ourselves as a university to our core free speech principles by enacting the University of Chicago Free Speech Code. And that means that we can question whatever the campus the dominant views are on campus about marriage or abortion or affirmative action or climate science or you name it. And this applies not only to our faculty but to our students and indeed to our staff. This university does not compel people to say things they don't believe, and it doesn't prevent people from saying things that they do believe.
If the university respects free speech, then does the student body do the same? Was Ryan Bourne alone in his beliefs, or do people really think conservatives deserve to be censored? To investigate further, I decided to ask some of my classmates what their experience has been.
I've always felt that Princeton is an astoundingly open and creatively supportive school for everyone to voice their opinions.
In my personal experience, I'm on a team and I feel very comfortable saying whatever I want to say.
I personally have not felt my right to speak infringed upon, and I don't think I've heard of that many instances on this campus, which in my opinion is a good thing.
I don't necessarily feel like Princeton is a place where free speech is under threat.
I don't think at all that anyone would ever say that conservatives should be censored on campus or that their speech or their values shouldn't be shared.
Off the top of my head, I really can't think of a time where I felt like I couldn't say anything that I was thinking about. But I could see how some students might be afraid to say things on campus.
Well, considering this is a more liberal campus and with the whole election of Trump, I do feel like I don't think anybody would say conservatives can't say what they want to say, but I feel like there was this atmosphere where it was more difficult, if you supported Trump, to come out and say that because everybody else was so anti-Trump.
I think that the liberal segment of the student body is very outspoken in that they host rallies and they do things like the Democratic Socialist Club had a walk around campus or something like that. However, conservative bodies, even though I do think that there is a silent majority on this campus of conservatives, they don't have a platform in which to express their beliefs.
I'd say that far more students fall closer to the center, and there is quite a bigger contingent of conservative students on campus than is willing to talk about it. And I think it probably is a fact of just like not really feeling comfortable necessarily always sharing their beliefs, and also working under the assumption that if they do share their beliefs, then someone is going to challenge them on them.
If you're 1 versus 99, you know what I mean? Like, and you're that one person, and like, 99 people are about to attack you for what you have to say. Like, you're obviously going to be reluctant to say it, and like, and you shouldn't. You should be able to say, okay, this is how I feel. Like, relax. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna go ahead and like do something crazy. Just like, this is how I feel. Like, I'm sorry, but that's my opinion.
To really protect free speech, you need not only the formal institutional commitments, the rules and regulations, you need an ethos on campus that welcomes robust criticism of dominant ideas. You need to avoid the creation of a suffocating environment in which people, even though formally free to question a dogma or an orthodoxy, feel so afraid of retaliation, of being shunned, of being called a bad name, a racist or a bigot or whatever, that they censor themselves. Well, that's no good. We might as well not have formal free speech protections if true, robust civil dialogue is going to be shut down by a suffocating ethos that leaves people feeling too afraid to speak their minds.
Obviously, speech has its limits, inciting violence, for example. And obviously, you shouldn't say everything that comes to mind depending on the situation. But do conservative ideas and arguments really cross that line of what is and isn't okay to say? What effect would self-censorship have on the university's mission in truth-seeking?
I think like it's definitely important to hear both sides. I think if like the conservatives are censoring themselves, like liberals will never have the opportunity to hear exactly what they're thinking. Like, of course, liberals might not agree with it, even if they hear, a whole speech about it. But I think it's important that conservatives say how they feel so that we have like a whole, like a rounded perspective on how like both sides are feeling.
We want our students to be ambitious. We want them to aim for the stars. We want them to want to be the greatest successes they can be in their fields. And yet, we need to make sure that that doesn't degenerate into the vice of careerism, which causes people to censor themselves and go silent because they fear that by expressing a dissenting opinion or an unpopular view, they'll do something that will damage their future prospects. We need boldness and courage and a willingness to speak out.
I do think it is important that across the colleges, across the country, if we are going to promote this climate of free speech, the onus goes on the individual. If you have a different opinion, if you have something to say, I would definitely encourage you to say it, engage in that debate. Don't just silence yourself because you know it will maybe cause waves.
Otherwise, a suffocating political correctness will descend on the campus, on our students, and the whole cause of education, of truth-seeking, of knowledge-seeking will be compromised.
With self-censorship posing such a threat to the university, I decided to ask how students could push back against this.
I was heartened and encouraged just a couple of years ago when, in response to some events that were taking place on campus where some students occupied President Eisgruber's office and made a series of demands, including removing Woodrow Wilson's name from the Woodrow Wilson School because of Wilson's racist views. A group of students formed an ad hoc organization called the Princeton Open Campus Coalition.
What the group itself, POCC, tries to do is not only protect free speech, but promote open discussion and dialogue. The idea that, of course, the university is a private institution, and private institutions have more leeway in choosing what does and does not happen within their walls, but as Princeton, as almost any other university in America or in the world does, the whole point to be here is to learn more about yourself, to learn more about truth in the world, and you can't do that without open discussion and dialogue.
Now that was a service to the university, whether the student demands were valid or not. The fact that somebody stood up and said, we're going to talk about this, we don't agree, and we're not going to be silenced. And that did take some courage on the part of those Princeton Open Campus Coalition students, because they knew, unfortunately, that by speaking out they would be labeled as racists and bigots, that they would be attacked on social media, and those things did happen.
Was the Open Campus Coalition successful in generating dialogue around the Woodrow Wilson issue? Students seem to agree.
To be honest, all I really know about Woodrow Wilson, I thought Woodrow Wilson was the same person as Winston Churchill until I got to Princeton, and now I know the difference.
I don't think they should get rid of the name without asking anybody, or like without just saying like this needs to be eliminated. If there is like a large amount of people who feel that way, there should definitely be a debate, and there should definitely be like a conversation between both sides. Like, and in the end, if it's like taken that most people want to remove, then I think that's a fair thing to do.
I do think there should be an open discussion, but I also understand why people don't want to have a discussion, and that's because of emotion. And that's because they want to move on from the past. Like, they want to acknowledge it, but move on from it.
We have to be willing to be offended. We have to be willing to listen to ideas that we do find repugnant. It's hard for anybody. All of us have beliefs that are very dear to us. And yet, for the sake of free speech, for the sake of learning, for the sake of truth-seeking, we have to expose ourselves, make ourselves vulnerable to hearing things, being confronted with ideas that offend us.
I think one of the most important things, especially in a climate that already allows for free speech, is to take advantage of that opportunity and not self-censor yourself.
We're doing our part on the faculty and in the administration to make sure those formal protections are there. And we're trying to be good role models of free speech. But students have to do their part, and that means that students are going to have to respect each other when someone questions a dogma or a campus orthodoxy or a dominant belief. It means that students are going to have the courage to speak their minds even when doing so exposes the fact that they hold unpopular opinions. Both those sets of people who are tolerant and willing to engage critics, and people who are courageous enough to be critics of dominant ideas, are doing the whole university a great service. Certainly doing their fellow students a great service, because the only way we're going to advance the cause of truth-seeking is if there are people who are willing to listen, even to ideas that they find repugnant, and people who have the courage to advance ideas even if others will find them repugnant.
Not only do we need more tolerance on the part of those who disagree with conservatism, but more so, we need conservatives to have the courage to speak their minds in the face of opposition by the majority. Until we care enough to do this, nothing is going to get better. It's not.